Guys, welcome to the TRM show. My name is Mathew Park. I am your host of today's show. Guys, looking forward to having a very special and unique guest on today's episode, guys. A guy that, of course, is no stranger to this, from a guy who, of course, was a pro athlete at one point of his life to leading and coaching a coaching business, quite a large one at some point down the road. Now, of course, owning and actually running multiple gyms and actually leading teams in gyms with a company called Gym Builder as well. So I have a guy named Evan Lindsay, guys. Evan is a rock star. Looking forward to having you on the call today, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it, man.
You bet, buddy. Looking forward to it, man. So you can tell this guy, of course, he has the Cayman tan right now, which I'm envious of, brother. Just wanted to share that with you,
I love it.
I love it, buddy. So Evan is, guys, of course, is an expert in, gyms and, of course, teams. So with that being said, I'm going to go back a couple of steps, buddy, because, of course, you were an athlete. And then, of course, you went into, of course, fitness coaching and so forth. What was that turning point from you? And what did you take from being an athlete to being a coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some of the biggest things I took from being an athlete and then moving into the world of coaching was just understanding like how to be coachable. I think that was one of the biggest things. Playing sports at different levels, you're going to have experiences with different coaches that are going to be good for you at different stages, but then just recognizing like, how do I be coachable? Because obviously when you get to a high level of sports, you have to adapt to the game. And I think one of the things that I really was a challenge for me at the start was when you went from being a professional athlete to, say, in the fitness world, coaching people that are more like mom and pop people, recognizing why they are there, because they're there for different reasons. And so I think like literally being able to allow them to coach you in the process on how to actually be good at this. Because if I come in and I want to put my lens on what I believe they want or how they should be acting or how everything should be working, I'm not going to be very good. And truthfully, that was like hard for me. I think the first 2 years, I don't think I was very good at coaching people because I was just like, this is what worked for me. You should do what worked for me because obviously it worked for me. So what's wrong with you? Like you should just get results. And so I think that was probably the hardest piece for me. So I think being coachable and letting other people coach you to be better at this was probably the biggest thing I took away, of just recognizing like they're all here for their own reasons. They all have their own goals and dreams they want. And at the end of the day, it's my job to figure out what those are and then see if I can actually move them forward and start to line them up to what I'm actually looking to create here as the coach. So, if that's the goal, I got to figure out what they want, what makes them tick, not just try and like make everybody not everybody's a hammer. So you can't or not everybody's a nail. So you can't just be a hammer. Like you can't just treat everybody the same way. I got to figure out like, how do they all fit into this? I think that was the biggest thing that took me a couple of years to kind of start to wrap my brain around.
So one thing you also mentioned before you became a gym owner, or multiple gyms, is you actually coached large teams of coaches.
Mm-hmm.
What was unique about kind of the way you coach? And of course, what were your takeaways and like, what did you learn in that experience? Because of course I can see your skill set there. It's quite incredible actually. So what's the difference, or what does that arena look like? Kind of curious for you.
So in terms of coaching coaches?
Yes.
Yeah. Coaching coaches was much harder than coaching clients, if I'm honest. The biggest thing I took away at the start, I would say, was a lot of the coaches, they just genuinely really, really, really wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And so they would get very caught in the other person's story about what was going on, and they would get very emotionally vested and tied into what the person had going on. And the piece I found was they would be helping people, but they would be, it's kind of like the difference between like sympathy and empathy. Like they would sympathize to the point where it's like, that's so bad. And they would leave the person in the situation, as opposed to empathizing with how hard it was and then challenging or finding a way to like logically move them into a better situation. And I think that was the hardest thing. Was that's a skill set that takes everybody time to cultivate, because there's a bit of like detached caring. I have to care about you enough, but I also have to detach myself from your situation enough to objectively see what's happening to move you forward. And that was the hardest part. Was I don't believe at the time I was skilled enough to recognize kind of what was going on. So I would just get kind of like pissed off at people. I was like, "Is your job just to make the shit better? Like, don't keep doing that stuff." And so I was not very effective at leading them, because I literally was like not doing what I knew they needed to do, because I don't think I was like capable to like see it from another level.
Of course.
So I think that was the hardest part with coaching coaches, was just recognizing like the game that they were playing, and then developing my own skill set enough to recognize I can't just say, like, again, like I said in the other example, like, I do it this way, you should do it my way. It doesn't really matter how I do it. It's just recognizing like what do they need to create some awareness and create some principles to consistently have them make people better. And I found that was very hard, truthfully.
Interesting. So now, what made you move into being a gym owner? Was it you found coaching coaches? That was, of course, that was a few years of your life. Then, of course, you moved over to being a gym owner. So, what's that stage look like for you now? What was the transition period for you in that phase?
Yeah, so kind of backing up a little bit. So I owned the gym. We ran it remotely. So that was a skill set of learning how to like do work through people in a two-dimensional world. I then moved into that other position for another company where I ended up coaching a large team of coaches. But I just hit a point where I'm extremely grateful for all my time there and everything that happened. But it was just, I could see I wanted to go in one direction. I could see they want to go in a different direction. And I was like, all right, well, it's time to do something differently. And the gyms came about through some friends I played hockey with. They had after COVID, there was many obviously failing gyms out there. They had a failing franchise unit, and they reached out to me with the offer of, if you fix it, you can have it. Obviously, if anything is free, it's usually not free at all. It's really expensive. And so I chose to say yes. And so that was how it started. So we took over the first gym. They had about 42 members. The rent was more than the revenue. Inherited 5 people on that team. And then that was where it started. So at the time I was still consulting with other gyms. And then I started to like build this new little, mini empire, or whatever you want to call it. And then one gym led to 2, 2 led to 3, 3 led to 4. And so now we've got 4 different teams in 4 different states growing these gyms.
Interesting. On your average gym, what is your usually your team comprised of, like 5 to 10 people per gym for a team, or?
Yeah, so total staff members is going to range in the current setup from 5 to 9 per gym.
Per gym. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you're looking at 24-ish people.
And those, from a square foot perspective, we're talking how big of a gym?
It depends. I inherited the lease on all of these, so there's some interesting things out there. Typically, it's about 3,500 square feet, though.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Is it more of like a private studio or group coaching, or what's kind of the format of the model you have a gym as?
Yeah. If you check it out, it's Metabolic. So if you Google Metabolic, the setup would be everything is class based. Okay. It's going to be one coach. Classes are going to be 50 minutes long, so 50. There's going to be 5 stations every day. Maximum people in a class is going to depend on the square footage of the gym floor, but it's going to be either 20 or 25. Mm-hmm. And off of those 5 stations, everything is run off of the clock. So there's 3 different interval types. One they're going to call momentum, which is more of like athletic. So it's not going to be super heavy. There's no barbells. Next day is going to be anaerobic, which is more of like an all out. So the work to rest ratio is much shorter. And the last day is durability, which would be more of like a strength based day. And so those alternate through. It's a great model. We do not have one here on island. I wish we did. It would be wonderful. But yeah, that's how it runs. So for a gym that is at capacity, they're going to run anywhere between about like 41 and 44 classes a week.
Okay, got it. All right, interesting. Now, from a team perspective, of course, kind of the topic for our podcast today was on building teams. Mm-hmm. So a lot of coaches that come into our TRM process usually come in as a solo coach or have a solo coach with a VA, or maybe even a part-time coaching on their team. So what's kind of the first advice you give these coaches who are, maybe at 5 or 9K a month in their business? They're kind of running their own ship, but they're growing past 10K a month to 20K a month. Now they want to get their first hire. What do you look for in things in that category?
Yeah, I think instead of what to look for, I'd probably just say, like, here's a couple things to like consider not doing at the start, just because it's easier to be like, don't do that and then transition over. I think the common mistakes I see people have is they're getting tired.
Yeah.
They're working a lot of hours, and really what they want is a rest. And so they look for the first person who is, I would say, a warm body who's eager, that just wants to help them, that kind of is around, that it seems like it's going to be kind of easy. And they're like, yes, tag, you got it. And they're like, holy shit, I'm going to go rest. And then they don't come back and ever check in with the person to know, A, do they know what the heck they're doing? B, does the person know if they're doing a good job or not? C, are the clients or the other people actually enjoying this? And then the next thing they're like, you know what I need to do? Market. I need more people now because I obviously need more money. And it's like, cool. And then if they're good at marketing, they usually just create like a shit ton of problems, because it's kind of like that was out of sight, out of mind. So I'd say that's the flow. I know that because I've done that. But I would say that's the thing to consider, is like when you're going to get your first few people hired in, I would just look at and I would ask myself the question of like, cool, so say this person starts with me, how do I know they would be doing a good job? So instead of getting into the emotional piece of like, I'm getting rest, that has nothing to do if they're doing a good job, because that was what everybody else just did, is they just, how do I know this is working? I'm not as tired. And it's like, that's not really a good measure of if they are doing a good job. So I would just consider like, hey, say they are here and they're coaching 2 to 5 hours a week. How would I know they're getting like an A+? They're showing up on time. They are doing this, they're doing that. The clients are getting results. Oh, okay, cool. So then when you're having conversations with anybody that might be joining your team, does this person have the skill set to do this right now? Do they have the desire to do this? Or do they want that? Or do they just want like the t-shirt that shows like, I work here and it's cool and I'm just going to do whatever I want? Like, so you're starting to think of like, what is the outcomes that I want to create?
Right.
And that doesn't take you more time. It just takes the ability to have like a little bit of time away from what you're doing to go for a nice walk, get a coffee, talk to a few friends. And the thing that you're going to want to do before they come in is like, I don't care if it's on a sticky note, but like, you got to write this down somewhere. It can't just be like off of your head. And so when you meet with them, you're like, yeah, like I want you to do like blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. And then you again walk away. Like you may as well have not bothered. Like you need to like literally make it like tangible and real for the person. Because then people are either going to look at it, they're going to be like, yes, I want to do that, or no, I don't. And if it's a no or a maybe, even though they might like know you, they might like you, and they want to do you a favor, say no, thank you, or not right now. And like keep looking for somebody that wants to do that. Because every like, I would say, I don't want to say bad, but every hire that's like not great at the start, the amount of time and energy and money it costs you is astronomical. You just think it's easier to bring someone in and like solve the problem. But if you've got someone that's going to solve the problem for more than like 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever it is, and they're like good for like 9 months or a year because they see what you're doing and where you want to go, the amount of more revenue you're going to make, the more that you're going to pay them, and the amount of like friction and like the little like painful things that you're going to avoid are going to pay you back like 10 times more. So if it takes you an extra month to hire that person, the right person for whatever you've got for that role, 100% worth it, because every bad hire is very expensive on like mentally, emotionally, and on every level.
Of course. That's good advice, Evan. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So as a coaching, so whether you're an in-person coach or online coach, so I want to kind of go off into like how to lead a small boutique team. Let's say the team is no more than 1 to 3 people, right? Let's say it's 3 coaches and a owner. Is there a difference between an online trainer versus an in-person coach with an in-person team, like how you would lead that team, or is it kind of the same to both parties?
Yeah, it's going to be a different person in the online world.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I'm going to be running an online business versus an in-person business, as part of the hiring, things I might do is cool. Let's just see how good are they with technology. Do they understand Zoom? Or are they like, oh, I just like talking to people. I hate technology. And it's like, well, literally the medium we have to use is a piece of technology. So like, what the heck are we talking about here, right? So I think there's certain attributes that are like wildly different for in-person versus online. So I think that is a key component of just like recognizing like, hey, what are the attributes and the skill sets to do the job?
Of course.
That's going to be a biggie. In terms of other than that, a thing just to really consider when you have 1 to 3 people on your team is the more time that you get in the same space, whatever that looks like, the more people are going to get to know each other. So if you have a physical gym or a physical thing, the easiest way to do that is like if you work out together, or if you go get a coffee, or if there's like the impromptu time in passing. Often in the online world, it's like if you have a person, what most people end up doing is they're like, cool, if I'm like the main person, and I've got like Johnny over here and Sally over here, they never talk to each other. And so the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. You're just in the middle trying to like always juggle everything. And there's never any like impromptu meetups or conversations because we don't have time for that. We're very busy, right? But it's like if you can then start to get people on the same page meeting, even if it's once a week in like a clear agenda, so it's not just like shooting the shit, that's going to be one of the fastest things to grow is, cool, how are we doing? What's working? What's not? How do we solve problems? What are you struggling with? What are you struggling with? Because when you're getting the business moving from like 1 up to like 2 and 3, there's a really good concept in a book called Tribal Leadership. So that's a book I'd recommend anybody to check out if you're getting going on this. The concept they always talk about is dyads versus triads. And so a dyad is a 1-to-1 relationship. So if you picture that example where it's like me and I got John and Sally, well, right now I have a relationship with John and John has a relationship with me. I have a relationship with Sally. She has a relationship with me. I'm the middle. If I create a triadic relationship, now I introduce them to each other and we all talk. And now what's going to happen is as they have problems, they're going to talk to each other to solve the problems and not everything goes through me. So one of the fastest way to then grow and scale is like, how do I connect people so that they know what we're trying to do and just make it consistent? And I think that's the biggest thing when you're getting off the blocks is if people know what their jobs is, then how do we start to like create consistent communication to build an actual culture so that we're moving towards something together where not everything has to run through Evan or Matt or whoever. Like the team actually starts to work together and they might even have some back channel conversations. And you're like, well, I want everything to go through me. And it's like, well, cool. If you want to go really slow, you should definitely do that. If you want to move a little faster, you're going to have to start to like give and trust people a little bit.
Makes complete sense. So with the online coaching arena, I'm an online coach. I have 4 trainers on my team, right? So me with 4 trainers. You recommend a meeting every week. You're saying with an agenda, correct? Got it. So now, how long is that meeting usually? Half an hour, 45 minutes? What's kind of a good time frame that you've noticed in coaching so many teams?
Yeah, it's going to depend on how much time they're putting in. So in an example like that, let's say we'll make like two scenarios up here. We got scenario 1 where maybe I got like 3 trainers, and maybe there are like a couple of them are doing like 2 to 5 hours a week. You're not going to want to meet with them once a week if it's like, well, they only do 2 hours of work. I don't want to make them meet with me a third time where it's like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak. So in a case like that, if people are at a smaller cadence, you might be having a meeting every like 2 to 4 weeks with everybody. But then you're like people that are like working more, you're going to want to meet with them more. So if someone's doing like 10 hours a week, you're going to want to meet with them weekly for like half an hour, again, having an agenda to check in. Because as the business grows, and especially if you start coaching a bit less, they're going to see problems that you don't see. And your job really becomes like, how do I look at what are the systematic problems in the business I fix? These people keep showing up with this. They can't find the link to that. They don't know about this. And you're just like, well, they should be better. And it's like, well, that's not really going to work. Because if you go and you double your client load, like these problems are going to get worse.
Got it. Okay.
So if people are working quite a bit, like a weekly, right? So if we look at like team 2 and maybe you've got like the same number of team members, but everybody is doing like 10 to 15 hours a week.
Got it.
At that point, then I'd be like, cool, everybody should be jumping on. It could be as short as 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It needs to have a very clear agenda where if people come on, it's like, let's all check in. What's going good? Awesome, guys. here's where our goals are. Here's where we are. Are we on track or off track? This was the projects that we're working on. Here's the update. Here's what's not working for everybody. Let's discuss these really quick, or let's like go through and make sure we're on track. Where people usually run into trouble is they try and like go over like either the numbers and then like blend training into it. So they try and do too many things in the same meeting. And so for a lot of these times at the start, just like one meeting a week is lots, just with a very simple agenda, just to make sure everybody knows where are we at, what's working, what's not, what should I be focused on this week.
Love that. Now, size of the meeting. So when do you find is a number where it almost gets too big of a meeting every week? Like, is it like 8 people on a call, 6, 10? What's the number that usually you find?
For me, I find it's anywhere between about like 4 to 6.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a couple articles out there. I can't remember what it was, but it was basically anytime there's more people than could share like 2 medium pizzas, you probably have too many people on your meeting. I would say that's probably pretty accurate. Because otherwise it just gets to be weird and gnarly, truthfully. So yeah, for us, it's right around 4 to 6.
Like that. Okay, perfect. And then when it comes to like coaches, let's say for example, an online coach, actually more of a hybrid coach who does in-person, online combined together, right? And they've got like online trainers, in-person trainers. What do you recommend, like how to organize meetings like that so that everyone's on the same page? Like how would you organize and structure that?
Yeah, that's the hardest style to run. So if you have a meeting where if you have a completely virtual team, it's pretty easy to organize them. If you have a team where it's like all in person, it's easy to organize them. When you have some that are in person and some that are virtual, it gets very messy. Mm-hmm. And so a thing I'll see sometimes is like, say you have like 2 people in an in-person business that are part of something and you have an online person. Where it gets really weird is if you ask the online person to come into a meeting and the in-person people are in the same computer or in the same room and they just have like little side conversations, it's like very awkward. So the big thing I find is like if you're running a hybrid team or a hybrid meeting, everybody has to act as if it's a virtual one, have their own computer, their own headphones, there's no reverb, and everybody has to act and operate the same way. Otherwise, when you're interjecting a virtual into that, it like the thing just will not run smoothly. And what ends up happening is the person in the virtual gets cut out of all of the conversations or any of the side talk or any of the meeting things being done there. So you kind of have to like equalize the playing field just to make sure all the ins and the outs are the same way. Otherwise, it creates a lot of friction and it's not done intentionally. It's just literally the logistics won't work well.
Okay, that's good to know. Interesting. All right. Now, as far as like, this obviously could be a whole different podcast, but when it comes to incentivizing team members or models that work or models that don't work, in your experience, what are good ways to do that or not do it or red flags?
Yeah, great question. Kind of like the other thing, I'll talk about what I find doesn't work at the start because it's kind of easier than the alternative. I find where people struggle with is at the start, if they don't know how much they can pay people, they pay people what they think they want to make personally or what they think the other person should be happy making. And often at the start, people fall into one of 2 camps. They either grossly overpay or underpay people. And so the worst parting you can do at the start is if you start overpaying people and you have to pull money back, it's hard because no one likes to have anything taken away. They would rather have something and then have something added to it, right? So that's a common thing is sometimes people are just like, well, I feel like this would be good. This would work for me. And then later when they try and grow the team or things happen, they're like, shit, that wasn't ideal, right? So it's better to obviously start a little bit lower and then move up. The second problem I find people will make is once they know how to make money and they can bring it in, they try and go right to a salaried position because they assume that's what people want. So then they're like, all right, I think I can pay this person insert amount, 30K, 40K, 50K, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But if there's no way for the person to make more money with increased results, that's a problem. And then often they're like, I don't know, they don't seem to work really hard. And it's like, you're not giving them an incentive or showing them a path on how they would make more or do more. And so typically what happens then is like people pay out a bunch of costs and they get a bunch of fixed costs and then revenue does not grow proportionally. And then again, they have to like rake it back. So like things I wouldn't do at the start is like, if you're not sure how much to pay, start lower than what you believe or like ask a bunch of people. There's math and formulas, you can figure that out. And then the second thing I would avoid is avoid jumping to like salaried wages very quickly. I've done it numerous times. I will never do it anymore. I never do. So it's always like, how do you just like start a little easier with it? The thing I would consider is, even if you started with a lower base, then what you can do is you can incentivize the one action you want to have happen. Right. So I'll use like a gym example because it's very easy. If I pay a trainer $30 for a class, you might be like, oh, that's really cheap. That's not enough. Cool. For every person you get in the class above 15, you get an extra $1.50. So you can make up to 45 in an hour if it's full. Oh, that's good. So now I'm incentivizing the thing I want, full classes. If I hire somebody and I want them to do in an online coaching program where I might be selling, say, like a 6-week front end, and then the person could carry on after. It's like, cool, well, I'll pay you X amount per hour for this. And then if the person carries on, then I'll pay you a kicker of like $50. So if they carry on for like the 7th week. So now you're paying for the incentive of doing a good job and making more. Obviously those numbers are arbitrary, but like I would just incentivize the one main thing just at the start, because then it's like anything, right? If I do this and I press the button, I get more of it. Like you need to like start to teach that and cultivate that culture at the start.
Makes complete sense. That makes sense. Almost like, almost like the base pay, but lower than what you probably think. And then you can incentivize on the top end, basically.
Yeah. You can always pay people more. You have a very hard time taking it back and paying people less. And going back to the example I gave of like how to hire, it's like, well, how would I know someone's doing a good job? They show up, they do all of these things, and people that start on 6 weeks carry on after. Cool. You now tie the compensation to the thing that you would know on how they're doing a good job.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So now you're tying together like the two ideas in a very simple way. Because then it's like, oh, cool. You want me to do that. And if I do that, then I get paid more. Yeah, cool. And then for the business, you're like, well, now we're going to make more money. It's great. Like it's a win-win for everybody.
Got it. What are red flags you've seen over the years with teams, like team members and teams, and how not to lead them or how to lead them? What are red flags you've seen that have resulted in, obviously issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Red flags. It's going to be different for every person that'll watch this, because every person on here is going to have different things that they are going to value for how they run their team differently, and different goals or objectives or what they want to create. So anything I'll be sharing will be more from like tainted from my own lens of things that I would say are like red flags for me. So I guess that'd be the caveat to this list. Red flags for me, there's a great saying by, I don't know who said this first. I think Oprah stole it from somebody, but it was, when people show you who they are, believe them. So if someone shows up late, like believe that they'll probably show up late again. If someone goes and, does a certain thing that annoys you, like that's probably what they're going to keep doing. If you catch them in a lie, that's probably going to happen again. I think that's probably one of the biggest red flags I find for new coaches or people working there, is they don't trust their gut enough on the things that go against the things that they know aren't correct, even if they don't have a system for them. So I think that's the big red flag. I think for me, it's more personal at this point, is like attention to detail, like really does bother me for people working with me. So if they want to skate over the details, or they get caught in ideas as opposed to like execution or results, it's a really big red flag, because especially when you're starting out, for anybody listening to this, if you got like 1 or 3 staff members, it's easy to have good ideas, but like, red flag for me is like someone that's caught in ideas, but they can't do like the bare minimum of their job, or they always have an excuse for it. And so that's the biggest thing at the start, is like, excuses over results, or having reasons why things don't happen, as opposed to being able to do what we said we were going to do.
Interesting. I like that. And when now on the flip side, leadership qualities that you really like and see in great teams, for in-person trainers who have teams and online trainers who have teams, what are those leadership qualities that you like to see that are good initiative actions?
Yeah, I think the thing that I value the most, in some respects, is people that are solution orientated. So I'd say like people that like are not afraid to call out a problem, but they don't just call out a problem and walk away, meaning like, yeah, hey Matt, the link on the site doesn't work. I'm like, well, thanks, bro. I'm like, cool, the link doesn't work. I reached out to so-and-so to let them know. Thank you. Like, so like I think for me is just like a second order level of thinking of like, I want people that see problems and they'll say them, but then it's like I also want people that are like, we've shared enough and they feel like they've been trusted enough, they have enough autonomy to like actually try and like solve the problem without just coming in and being like, you know, the sign's not turned on. Well, cool. Did you plug it in? No, I just went home. It's like, well, just plug the sign in. Like, you know, it's supposed to be on. So I think like that's like the base, very base level for me is just like problem aware and they're willing to speak up, but then they're willing to like take chances and try things to try and solve the problem. That's like a big thing for me because as you continue to grow, you don't have the ability to make all of these decisions. And so you just need people that are like, you know, they get it, they want it, and they're willing to try stuff. And that's on obviously us to create an environment where they feel safe to. But that's going to be the key pieces. And I'm fine if they make a mistake, just do it differently next time. It's okay.
I love that. I love that. Last thoughts, my man, as far as things that you can share, some nuggets or lessons that you've learned to kind of let our viewers know about. Because of course you've been leading teams for quite so many years. So last nuggets.
Biggest thing, we had a meeting today, and I think I shared this with somebody else who's a newer manager. And I think the thing that I would say is just like always be testing things. So instead of just like having an idea to be like, so-and-so says they want to help with this, I'm going to create a whole job description for them. I'm going to hire them. I'm going to, and it's like, well, cool. Test them for a week. Cool. Why don't you just try it for a week? See if you like it. So here's what the goals would be when you test it for the week. Let's see if you can do this and this, and just see if they actually have a skill set, a proclivity to do this, and they can just do it well. So I think that's the biggest thing with teams and with people is like, just always be paying attention and always be like offering opportunities for people and like test things, keep testing it. Because by the time you make a decision to hire someone or put someone to a bigger decision, it shouldn't just be like because you had a conversation. It's like they interview well. It's like, well, cool, they did that. And as part of the process, I had them submit something. I had them do this. I had them do that. And like you already know who they are. So it kind of goes back to the when people show you who they are, believe them. Create an opportunity to like test people along the way, create an environment for that. So like things become more earned, not given. Because that's how you're going to keep building momentum and building speed. And honestly, some people are not going to like that. And that's okay. They might not be the right fit. A quick example, as part of one of the things we're doing, we're building a small piece of software right now. And so I went and I put out the job description. I had like 60 people apply for this thing. So different thing. I'm not a huge like software builder, but I'm like, I knew enough about this to be dangerous. So then I actually went and hired 4 of these guys and I all paid them a little bit of money. The guy that was by far the best on paper did not want to do the test. He's like, you should just be hiring me. And I was like, maybe. If you want to do this, I'll pay you for your time. They all went through, he submitted it. The work he submitted was like hot garbage. He by far had the best CV and he was a pain in the ass to work with. So at the end of it, I did not hire him. We hired somebody else. But again, it's like, how do you just like test things quickly? And the person that we've hired has been like gangbusters. The guy's like on fire. So I think it's the same in all of our businesses. We only have so much time, attention, or money. So how can you just test things? Even if it's just like, hey, if you want, you can join this meeting. Oh yeah, I'd really like to do that. If they keep telling you they want a full-time job and they don't join the meeting, they've already shown you that they're not going to probably do anything else for a certain amount. So like, how do you just test things constantly to see like, what are people going to do?
Intriguing. Now, one more question. So with that in mind, testing, almost like probation with new coaches that are hired, or even like someone on the team, right? What time frame do you think is ideal? Like, is it a month, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months? Like, what do you think is a good to test people like in the job that of course you're hiring them to do? See if they're actually going to be a fit, if they're going to work long term.
Great question. It's going to be different at different stages of your business, because at different stages of your business, your product and the product they deliver is going to be more mature. Right. So when you first get going and the first few people you hire, you'd rather hire someone that's like pretty good at sales and can kind of figure it out.
Got it.
Once your product's more mature, you're not going to want to have somebody that wants to always figure it out. You want someone that can kind of like do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
General rule of thumb for me is, and the way I always explain this to our teams is like, when you go to the fair and they have the thing where you're like, you got to be this tall to get on the ride.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So if you think of like, here's what the job description is, or here's how I know they're doing a good job. What I would do is I would picture for all of you guys at the start, a time period 4 to 6 weeks out, and be like, okay, 4 to 6 weeks out, how do I know they're doing a great job? Because when you first answer that question, how are they doing a good job? It's going to be kind of vague.
Mm-hmm.
I would picture a time that's a little bit in the future, and I'd be like, here's exactly how I know they're doing a good job. And then what I would look to do is I wouldn't hire anybody, or I wouldn't bring anybody on my team when I first meet them. I don't think they can be that good in 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
So instead of like constantly flexing, it should be 2 weeks and then 4 weeks and 8 weeks and whatever. It's like part of it is just like 4 or 6 weeks, whatever your time frame is. And then it's like, you're only going to let someone on now that's like tall enough to get on the ride where you know they can get to be that good. Otherwise, if you're like, they're so lovely and they'll really be really good, but it's going to take a year. And it's like, shoot me in the head. Like, we don't have time for a year because you guys don't have enough time and attention to like develop people. At that point, they aren't a coach for you. They're a client still. They're just a client that you like that wants to help you. And that's where like a lot of people to start get stuck, because they just haven't kind of figured out like how would they be doing a good job. So who should I let on the bus and who should I not yet?
Makes complete sense. So transparently speaking, it's funny because I'm right now actually having a couple calls and sessions right now with Evan about our own process for our own team, which is kind of cool. And he's been very valuable in learning and seeing, those 5 and 10 steps ahead on like how the team lines up, where's the best position for them for the fit, expectations, like really finding how do you serve them, which has been super valuable. Which if you're of course listening or watching to this and you're looking for, a guy to lean on for maybe a call or two or some support or gym building expertise, check out Evan. He's a pretty cool dude with, lots of beautiful hair. I love you, buddy. I'm going to talk about joking because that's how I roll, buddy.
I love it.
Where can they find you?
If you go to gymbuildermethod.com, you'll find us there, and you can get in contact with me that way.
My man, absolute pleasure as always, buddy. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, and looking forward to seeing this episode, of course, go live pretty soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. I know how hard it can be and tough it can be when you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or even burnt out in growing your business. I have been there, so I can relate. So before you wrap up, I want to offer you something special, free of charge, as my gift to you. It's our Trainer Business Assessment. If you go to trainerrevenuemultiplier.com, you can get a copy of that. There's a link on the homepage to grab that assessment. This will give you clarity you need to see where your company is at right now, the bottlenecks you're facing or where you're possibly stuck in the business, and what steps you can take to move forward to grow it to the next level. And if you want to go one step further, we can book a call together and I can personally go over your results with you and give you a roadmap you can move forward with to grow to the next level. Head over to the website. Let's get some clarity together. I look forward to speaking to you soon, and I wish you an amazing day. Take care. Let's keep rocking.